Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
For more than a decade, Flight MH370 has lingered like a ghost in the skies, a wound in aviation history that refuses to close. 239 souls vanished, and the world was left with silence. Families waited. Investigators searched. Oceans swallowed answers. But now, something new has emerged. Artificial intelligence has re-examined the final signals of that flight, and what it uncovered is chilling. The path it drew does not point to where search teams once scoured the deep. It does not return us to the familiar maps or the exhausted theories. Instead, it veers into the impossible. A place no one had seriously considered. A place so remote, so brutal, so untouched by human hands, it almost feels as if the sea itself has been guarding the wreckage. And that raises a darker question. Was MH370 lost by chance? Or was it pulled into a silence no one was ever meant to break? This is the story of the impossible flight path, the relentless search, and the haunting signals that refuse to die. A mystery that still whispers from the depths, waiting for us to follow where it leads. For years, the search for MH370 has circled the same waters, vast, cold, unforgiving. Governments poured millions into scanning the seabed. Experts argued over arcs and drift models, and families waited through silence. But the wreckage never appeared. Now, a new voice has entered the mystery. Not a human investigator, but artificial intelligence. Fed with satellite data, autopilot behaviors, and thousands of simulated flight patterns, AI traced a path that stunned researchers. It didn't lead to the familiar 7th arc alone. It pushed farther, deeper, into a place the maps had dismissed. A place so remote, so brutal, so untouched by human hands, it almost feels as if the sea itself has been guarding the wreckage. And that raises a darker question. Was MH370 lost by chance? Or was it pulled into a silence no one was ever meant to break? The answer may lie in the shadows of the ocean floor. March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur, bound for Beijing. 40 minutes later, its transponder went dark. No distress call, no warning. Radar lost its trace as if the aircraft had dissolved into the night sky. 239 lives disappeared, and with them the world's confidence in its own technology. For days, headlines echoed the same chilling question. How can a modern plane simply vanish? Search planes scoured the South China Sea. When nothing was found, the focus shifted west. Radar revealed the unimaginable. MH370 had turned sharply back across Malaysia, cutting across the peninsula before diving into the southern Indian Ocean. Theories multiplied. A fire in the cargo hold, a catastrophic systems failure, or a deliberate act by the pilot. Some whispered of hijacking, others of a military mistake buried in silence. But none explained the absence of wreckage. Years of searching followed. Governments spent billions mapping over 200,000 square kilometers of seabed. Oceanographers charted ridges and canyons no one had seen before. But the ocean gave back only fragments. A wing flaperon on Reunion Island in 2015, a few more pieces along Africa's coast. They confirmed the aircraft had met the sea, but not where or why. And so, the mystery deepened. If the ocean could hide a plane this large, what else was it concealing beneath its surface? The next phase of the search would try to answer that, but it would come at a cost. The first hunt for MH370 became one of the most expensive searches in aviation history. Between 2014 and 2017, Malaysia, Australia, and China mapped nearly 120,000 square kilometers of seabed. Sonar scanners swept ridges and canyons. Ships dragged cameras across slopes where volcanic scars made the ocean floor a maze. Each pass raised hopes. and each return brought nothing. By 2017, the governments called off the mission. Officials admitted they had searched the most likely areas but could not guarantee success. For families, it was another blow, a declaration that their loved ones were lost, yet without the dignity of answers. Then, in 2018, Ocean Infinity entered the story. Armed with a new fleet of robotic submarines, they launched a bold, no-find, no-fee mission. In just a few months, their autonomous underwater vehicles scanned 112,000 square kilometers, far faster than any government effort before them. They too came back empty-handed. But what Ocean Infinity did gather was priceless. New maps of the seafloor, revealing trenches deeper and cliffs steeper than expected. These discoveries suggested something troubling. Some areas, deemed impossible to search in 2014, might have been hiding the truth all along. Billions had been spent, lives remained unanswered, and a darker thought began to emerge. If the plane was not in the searched zones, then where had it gone? That question would set the stage for Ocean Infinity's return and a shocking turn of direction. A decade after the disappearance, the silence was broken. At a memorial in March 2024, families were told of a new search, not by governments, but by Ocean Infinity. They had failed once in 2018, but this time the stakes were different. The Malaysian cabinet quietly approved their return under a daring deal: no find, no fee. If Ocean Infinity brought MH370 home, they could earn $70 million. If they failed, they would walk away with nothing. By February 2025, their ship, Armada 7806, slipped into the Indian Ocean. It was no ordinary vessel. On board were fleets of robotic submarines, autonomous underwater vehicles that could sweep the seafloor faster and deeper than human crews. Phase 1 targeted the high-priority zone, areas where earlier missions had been cut short by steep underwater cliffs and broken equipment. By March, Phase 2 pushed farther southwest into regions no one had dared search. Then came the anomaly. As the ship repositioned for its second sweep, it suddenly veered off its projected course. The navigation data shows a sharp turn southwest, away from already scanned ground and into the edge of the unthinkable. To some, it looked like a glitch. To others, it suggested Ocean Infinity had new intelligence, perhaps whispered by artificial intelligence itself. Had the impossible flight path finally been revealed, and was the ship chasing it? March 10, 2025. Armada 7806 was expected to revisit a patch of ocean already swept during its first phase. Maps even traced the purple line of its projected path. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of continuing into familiar waters, the ship altered course. Its new heading cut southwest toward a region that had never been searched, far beyond the safe boundary of the original plan. The move left observers stunned. Why abandon a mapped course? Some experts believe it was nothing more than a logistical decision, a routine adjustment to cover ground efficiently. But others point to a deeper possibility. In those days leading up to the change, artificial intelligence was reanalyzing the satellite data. By blending burst timing offsets, frequency drifts, autopilot logic, and even WSPR signal disturbances, AI had begun to draw a picture, one that pointed not east, not north, but deeper into the unknown. The overlap of data was uncanny. Satellite handshakes matched. Drift analysis of debris curved into alignment. Even the 0819 UTC logon, that sudden jolt of life after silence, seemed to whisper in the same direction. It was as if the signals had been there all along, waiting for the right tool to connect them. Was the redirection coincidence, or proof that the impossible flight path was real? And if so, what had Ocean Infinity's crew seen beneath the waves that night? The key to the new search lies not in ships alone, but in the intelligence guiding them. Artificial intelligence has become the ghost hunter of MH370, pulling together fragments no human mind could fully connect. By training deep learning models on thousands of simulated flights, factoring in fuel exhaustion, autopilot logic, and satellite handshakes, AI has drawn a path long overlooked. One controversial tool is WSPR, the Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. Designed to study radio waves bouncing across the globe, not to track aircraft, Yet some researchers claim MH370 disturbed these signals as it moved across the sky. Critics call it noise, coincidence. Supporters argue it may be the invisible trail no radar could catch. Layered onto this are the infamous BTO and BFO readings, burst timing and burst frequency offsets, the subtle delays and shifts in satellite signals. For years, they were the foundation of the seventh arc. Now, with AI recalibration and quantum computing power, those offsets whisper something different, a trajectory deeper into the southern Indian Ocean, into waters barely mapped. Meanwhile, Ocean Infinity's robotic fleet has grown sharper. New autonomous vehicles can sweep deeper ridges, navigate trenches once considered unreachable, and scan faster than before. The ocean's excuses are running out. If this technology is right, then somewhere beyond the known arcs lies an impossible crash zone. But is technology uncovering truth or drawing us toward another illusion? Every time the data points shift, the theories return. Was MH370 lost to accident or intent? One of the most haunting ideas centers on Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. Investigators discovered he had run unusual flight paths on his home simulator, one eerily similar to the route MH370 is thought to have taken. To some, this was proof of premeditation. To others, coincidence. His colleagues described him as calm, professional, even cheerful before the flight. Could such a man truly have plotted such a fate? The second theory is mechanical failure. Silent, suffocating. A fire in the hold. A sudden depressurization. A cockpit crew rendered unconscious while autopilot carried the plane south until fuel ran dry. It explains the long silence, the steady handshakes, the final collapse at 0819 UTC. But it leaves no reason for why critical systems, like SATCOM, were switched off, only to return later. The third, hijack or interference. Yet no group ever claimed responsibility, no passenger list revealed a terrorist, and no evidence has ever surfaced to prove it. And then, the darkest possibility. A military accident, erased before it could be admitted. Some whisper the plane may have crossed into forbidden airspace, and that silence was enforced at the barrel of a missile. So many theories, so many shadows, but none explain why the ocean itself seems determined to keep the truth hidden. Long after MH370 slipped from radar, something unsettling lingered in the sky. Signals, not the kind that reveal coordinates, but faint handshakes between the plane's satellite unit and orbiting relays. For nearly 7 hours after its disappearance, these automated pings continued, whispering that the aircraft was still alive, still moving, though unseen. Then came the anomaly. At 0225 UTC, the satellite system known as SATCOM went offline. Hours later, it logged back on, as if someone had flipped a hidden switch. Why would a plane's lifeline to the outside world be shut down and then mysteriously revived? Was it a failure or an intentional act? Ground systems in Malaysia recorded bursts of activity too, like sparks in the silence. Analysts have argued for years over what they mean. Did the plane lose power, only to recover briefly? Did someone inside the cockpit try to re-establish control? Or were these echoes of a doomed system clinging to life as fuel ran dry? Each signal was incomplete, a fragment without context. But stitched together, they paint a haunting picture. A plane in ghost flight, stripped of voice, yet still whispering into the void. If those handshakes were real, then they led somewhere. But why didn't they lead us straight to the wreckage? Perhaps the ocean was never the only thing determined to keep the truth buried. MH370 is no longer just a missing aircraft. It has become a ghost that haunts the modern age. In a world where satellites track every phone, where data flows faster than light, this single jet proved that silence is still possible. That knowledge alone shook governments, airlines, and passengers alike. Aviation was built on certainty, backup systems, radar grids, constant communication. Yet on that night, in 2014, every safeguard fell away. Transponders were switched off, communication lines severed, and tracking vanished. If one jet could slip away, how many others could follow? Experts warned the skies we thought we owned were never truly ours. The loss of MH370 forced regulators to demand new technology, tracking systems that cannot be disabled, black boxes that can float and signal for months. But technology was not the only lesson. For many, MH370 became a prophetic warning, proof that human control is fragile, and that even in an age of satellites and AI, mysteries can still outrun us. Every fragment of debris, every handshake signal, every recalculated arc speaks of an aircraft that refused to be forgotten. Not simply a tragedy, but a sign. And if MH370 is the ghost of modern aviation, then perhaps its silence is not just about the past, but about what the future still refuses to reveal. The latest models do not circle back to the old arcs. They point somewhere new, a sector of the southern Indian Ocean so harsh, so isolated, it is almost untouched on modern maps. Experts call it impossible, not because it cannot exist, but because no one ever believed MH370 could have reached it. The seafloor here plunges into trenches, carved like scars, where light has never fallen. For Ocean Infinity's fleet, this is the next frontier. Every sweep of their autonomous submarines pushes against the silence, each scan a challenge to the ocean's refusal to yield its secret. Somewhere out there, amid mountains of rock and valleys of darkness, lies either the proof that ends the mystery or nothing at all. But here is the haunting thought. If the AI is right, then the plane's final journey was not a random drift. It was precise, deliberate, as though it was guided toward a place the world was never meant to see. And so the search continues, deeper and darker than ever before. The answers may be waiting in that impossible place, or they may never come. What waits in the silence at the edge of the ocean? A wreck, a truth, or something far more terrifying? The story of MH370 is not over. It may only just be beginning.